morning, friends and strangers. It's me, Chris, over here at the Modern Fantastic WordPress blog. I am giving this another go. Video blog number 2, number dos, with a topic that I'm excited to talk about called Why the Heck Did I Go with Science Fiction and Fantasy as my preferred writing genres? I would love to tell you about this. So there's I've been asked that question throughout my life, from when I was a kid all the way to adulthood. First off, from my parents going, why the hell aren't you an engineer like your father and your grandfather and your uncle? And why aren't you a lawyer? Because it makes good money, as they assumed. Why go with writing at all, honestly? And then in college, when I was taking my creative writing at Millikan, I had a professor that told me, don't go science fiction and fantasy. Don't do that. And I write poetry, that's fine, but don't go science. There's no money to be made there. They're not wrong. I have made $0 on my work so far. So far I'm proving them quite right. But I chose science fiction and fantasy for several reasons. Reason number one, I had to, when I was growing up, I had a very complicated home life that was challenging and confusing, as I'm sure a lot of people do. And I had I have a neurology, I guess, that I remember dreams a lot. And growing up, it was a form of escapism when I'd wake up from a dream and just sit and think about it for a while. It was, I'm not saying I was in a bad place. I grew up middle class. I physically was in no danger or anything like that, but I was confused a lot growing up from a very complicated parenting methods, I guess I would say. And I don't fault them. I mean, people are people. Everyone's different. No one makes it out of childhood unscathed, and I completely get that. But I grew up with having a very rich interior life. And I remember in second or third grade, my teacher said, write down your worst nightmare. And I raised my hand. I was like, worst nightmare? Are you sure you want me to write this down? And she's like, yeah, write down your worst nightmare. Let's hear. Everyone else is talking about, you having no clothes on in front of class, or being late for school, or being, drowning or something, or being stuck underwater and not being able to breathe, that kind of stuff. And I wrote about how 2 jackals came out of my attic closet and devoured my brother's hearts while I slept on either side of me. And how they left me alone and went to sleep on my brother's corpses. And that was second grade. I didn't watch scary movies growing up. I didn't watch horror. My parents tried to keep me, they didn't cuss around me until I was a teenager. There was no, very Christian household. There was no violence. There might be some yelling, some disagreements that were pretty intense, but I remembered so many of my nightmares and so many of my dreams growing up that the first thing I actually wrote in 5th grade and submitted, beyond, the nightmare class assignment, the first thing I submitted was a dream I had in 5th grade into our school newspaper. First thing I ever wrote. And the second thing I ever wrote, that the only thing I ever got money for in my entire life, was in 8th grade when I published a contest and I won first prize in the contest for the city. And it was just a short story about me running away from some dark something at night through the neighborhood. That's it. Like, all very heavy. Anyway, I grew up with a heavy dream background, heavy dream foundation. And I started writing through that, and I escaped through that. So I naturally gravitated toward fantasy and horror, weirdly enough, because bad dreams are bad dreams. And it's something that I really grew off of from a psychological standpoint. I learned so much from psychology by growing up and going, what the heck does that mean? I wasn't scared, but all my teeth fell out. What does that mean? What does it mean to be in a forest of birches and a giant bell, like a giant, Liberty Bell type thing hanging, like sitting in the middle of the forest? What does that even mean? That's so weird, but beautiful. And if I were to write and just cut all of that out of my life, cut all of that out of my writing, I wouldn't be writing who I am. And so I've done research my entire life on why dreams and dream imagery are bad for science fiction fans, bad for any genre, bad for any novel, any writing. A lot of people say, don't do it. Do not use dreams in any capacity in your work. Even though, I mean, I grew up with Animorphs. I grew up with fucking Power Rangers. Like, you can't tell me you've never dreamed a situation where there's a big bad monster and you wanted to be as big as them, and then suddenly you were and you fought them. Ever? You can't tell me that you were scared and you wanted to run away in a dream and you turned into a fish and you got away. You can't tell me you never had that dream. For people that dreams, I mean, I know a lot of people. There's a lot of different styles of living, and a lot of different dream capacity. But for someone who is a heavy dreamer with a heavy subconscious mind ticking away at night, that stuff is just a natural freaking progression for me. Like, oh yeah, of course, Animorphs, of course, I read that. Anne McCaffrey, I devoured fantasy books growing up. The first full-length novel I read was Michael Crichton's Lost World, not Jurassic Park, the second in the series, and I fell in love. I've read that book about 10 times now in my life. The most often read book in my book lineup. So I also fell into psychology, fell into science fiction, because I think it's really healthy to have these sweeping, reforming social issue questions that are separate from this current world to kind of progress yourself to like the natural end of a philosophical stance. And I think Orwell did that. I think a lot of really great sci-fi writers did that. And I think it's healthy and it's important. Neil Stephenson's doing that right now, and he's one of my favorite science fiction writers because he's just so intricate. Anyway, I chose to go science fiction fantasy because the foundation was there. I lived, and another point for my dreaming, I dreamed entire novels in one night sometimes. I dream point A to point B and all this in between in one night sometimes. And I have written novels on that. David in His Shade was created in part by a series of dreams I had of all these very fantastical, very cool characters that they end up being professors at a university or at a high school and then at a university. Yes, I did world building. I created all the side story and all the background and a world that can exist with these characters. And I had to add some stuff in, but I dream entire novels sometimes, and I think it would be disrespectful to me to try and remove all that when everything I write has come from that. Everything I write has come from that. But anyway, I'm not everybody, and I would absolutely love to hear about your opinions on all this. I think there's a lot of weak writing out there that uses dreaming as a crutch to having actual impactful dialogue with other characters or learning something from a organic point of view. And I get that. I don't think we should call dream writing weak writing. I think we should call weak writing, and not put the dreaming label on it per se, because there's some phenomenal books, novels, relics that have dreaming as a central point. Homer's Odyssey, for example, the Bible, for example, all sorts of great literature out there that is just chock full of dream imagery. Anyway, let me know what you think, and please leave a comment bomb as before. I appreciate you coming by. If you watched that first blog, and it was 14 minutes long, and I salute you. Thank you so much for watching. If not, if this is your first time coming in, welcome. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going to try and do some more of these. I'm probably going to try and do 2 of these a week as the schedule permits. I'm going to be hopefully going to grad school here in the next couple of months, so that's going to be a bit of a shift, and I'm going to keep trying to keep up on this, but we'll see. Anyway, have an awesome day. Happy Thursday, everybody, and take care.